Good morning everyone and welcome to the 2024 Remembrance Day service here at the Shrine of Remembrance. This is just an early warning that the Governor is only a few moments away, so if you haven't found your allocated seat yet, please, it's now time to start moving towards there. Or if you're just going to find a nice place of shade, now's the time to grab that piece of shade before we lock the street down completely and we begin today's ceremony. Would you please be upstanding for the arrival of Her Excellency the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC, PSM, Governor of Queensland, and Professor Graham Nimmo, RFD. Will you please remain standing as the Catafalque Party, today represented by the Australian Army 7th Combat Engineer Regiment, mount the shrine. For those of you who have access to a seat, please be seated. If you are standing out on the street behind, you're more than welcome to come forward now as the ceremony progresses, or please keep the shade because it's valuable at the moment here today, because we have been able to gather in a wonderful day here in Queensland today. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the air, land and water on the lands where we meet today. But most importantly, I welcome people of all faiths, beliefs and religions and cultures, because we have something that is the envy of the rest of the world here at the moment here in Australia, particularly in Brisbane. We are able to gather in peace and harmony. We can have our differences, we can have our objections with each other, we can have different political views, but the beautiful part is that we can gather here in complete security and respect for one another. I'd also like to welcome all of those people who are tuning in to today's ceremony via the RSL YouTube channel. We're being broadcast right around the world today. I'd like to welcome Her Excellency the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, Governor of Queensland, and Professor Graham Nimmo. The Honourable David Crisafulli MP, Premier of Queensland and Minister for Veterans. Senator the Honourable Anthony Chisholm. Acting Mayor, Councillor Krista Adams. Mr Stephen Bates MP, the Federal Member for Brisbane. Mr Stephen Miles, the Leader of the Opposition. The Honourable Dan Purdy MP, Police and Emergency Services Minister, Dean of the Consular Corps in the State of Queensland, Mr Peter George Dowling, members of our emergency services, elected officials and representatives from consulates and ex-service organisations. But most importantly, a big welcome to all of our veterans who are here today in uniform or out of uniform. We thank all of you who have given time up of your day to come here today to mark this significant remembrance. Today marks 106 years since the guns fell silent on the Western Front, signalling the end of the First World War. It is now a tradition that at the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month, we join together in honouring those who have served and those who have suffered or fallen in all wars and conflicts. Shortly, at 11 a.m, we will pause in silence to remember that sacrifice and the sacrifice of so many who went before us. We'll continue to honour the legacy of those who have served by passing this tradition on to others and future generations. Today we'll be joined by the 2024 Premier's ANZAC Prize recipients, Sophie Robertson and Michelle Pipe. We'll soon hear from Sophie about her experiences and her reflections and remembrance upon visiting the battlefields of the Western Front. It is through these lived experiences in future generations that we can share the stories and maintain the legacy. First of all, I would like to invite the President of RSL Queensland, Major General Stephen Day, DSC AM, to make the welcoming address.
On behalf of all veterans, I have the privilege of offering a few words in the presence of some of our state's most important citizens. In war, everyone gives something. Some give everything. Today, we pause to remember those who gave everything, our fallen. Sometimes our losses have been unimaginably painful. By the end of the Great War, 10% of the Australian adult male population had either been killed or wounded. No family, no community was untouched. Sometimes it can be hard to know how best to honour their sacrifice. There are, of course, memorials in every town and city across our great land, like this splendid one here before us. Yet there is another memorial, just as important, the one our fallen would wish for. Us and how we live our lives. Great nations are great not because of their wealth or their size, but because of their character, our character. I like to think that all of our fallen are able to look down on us and say, we did not die in vain. Our sons and daughters have made a great thing of the freedom and the opportunities that we kept for them. We can, if we choose to, continue to build a country that is an example to anyone who cares to notice in freedom, fair go, respect for all, and honest hard work. That, I believe, would be a good way for us to remember, to respect their sacrifice.
Thank you, Major General. I'd now like to introduce Sophie Robertson from Ayr State High School. She was a recipient of the Premier's ANZAC Prize for 2024. Each year, the ANZAC Prize is awarded to Queensland high school students and their teachers, providing them with an opportunity to gain in-depth understanding of the ANZAC legacy. Sophie, along with other students and teacher chaperones, participated in research projects, workshops, and they were actually able to enjoy a tour of the battlefields across the Western Front and also across the UK. This was a life-changing experience, and it enabled Sophie and her fellow recipients to engage with the ANZAC tradition firsthand, explore how the ANZAC legacy relates to their modern Australian life. Sophie will now come forward and share with us her experiences and her reflections on the tradition and commemoration and the importance of keeping this legacy alive.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. There is music in the midst of desolation and a glory that shines upon our tears. Lawrence Bignon, 1914. Only now do we, as recipients of the 2024 Premier's ANZAC Prize, understand the true gravity of these words. In April, when we traversed Belgium, France, and the United Kingdom, we were startled by its beauty. For everywhere we looked, the ANZAC spirit shone brightly. In La Hamel, where the townspeople shared breakfast with us, eternally grateful for the ANZACs who had protected their families. At Thibault House in Belgium, where we all sang Waltzing Matilda, just as the ANZACs had done 110 years ago. And on ANZAC Day, when the Australians and French stood together and proudly sung our national anthem. We owe this beauty to the thousands of ANZACs, fathers, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters who gave the ultimate sacrifice. Behind each tombstone, there was a story of an Australian who had loved our country so much that they'd given their life for it. Learning of their heroism, sacrifice, and honour ignited that flame within us, inspiring us to preserve the ANZAC legacy. We connected to our ANZAC roots by researching and commemorating the stories of two service people who had served or fallen during World War I. I was fortunate to pay tribute to my great-great-uncle, Garrett Swanson, who valiantly fell in the Second Battle for Bulcourt. I am the first person in my family to trace his name, forever inscribed in stone at the National Memorial to the Missing in Villa-Bretonneux. This opportunity to provide closure for my family was an experience that will always comfort me. The pride we felt for our ANZACs, our Australian history, in those sombre moments on the Western Front was unforgettable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Another tradition that we continue is the wearing of poppies. The origins of this go back to, of course, those terrible, bloody, muddy battlefields in France, when it turns out that the first thing to actually shoot new life were the beautiful red poppies, and they are symbolic of the blood that had been shed on those grounds. Today we wear those poppies in memory of those who were lost on those battlegrounds, known as Flanders Fields. I'd like to invite Michelle Pipe, who is from Yarrungan State High School, to recite the poem In Flanders Fields. Michelle was also an ANZAC recipient from the Premier's Prize, and she was the teacher chaperone who accompanied the children through those battlefields across the Western Front. Michelle Pipe.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Michelle and Sophie. Today we've been joined by the Australian Army Band Brisbane. They've been led by Major Richard Mason. Musician Dave Andrews will now lead us through the hymn, Abide With Me. Thank you. Please be seated. Another one of the significant traditions of this ceremony is the laying of wreaths and floral tributes. I would like to ask members of our official party to come forward and lay each wreath inside the Shrine of Remembrance. The representatives of our ex-service organisations will then come forward and lay their wreaths at the foot of the shrine. At the conclusion of the ceremony this morning, following the departure of our dignitaries, members of the public are encouraged to come forward and also lay wreaths and personal tributes here at the foot of the shrine. I would now like to ask our official wreath layers to begin the process of our first wreaths today. Her Excellency, the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, Governor of Queensland, and Professor Graham Nimmo. Premier of Queensland and Minister for Veterans, the Honourable David Crisafulli, MP. Representing the Prime Minister of Australia, Senator Honourable Anthony Chisholm. RSL Queensland State President, Major General Stephen Day, DSC AM. Major General Day will be accompanied by Sophie Robertson and Michelle Pipe. Acting Brisbane City Council Mayor, Councillor Krista Adams. Federal Member for Brisbane, Mr Stephen Bates, MP. Honourable Dan Purdy, MP, Minister for Police and Emergency Services. Leader of the State Opposition, Mr Stephen Miles. Members of our Defence Forces who will lay wreaths together: Commander Rosemary Apakatoa, Commanding Officer HMAS Morton, representing the Royal Australian Navy; Brigadier Giles Cornelia, DSM CSM, representing the Australian Army; and Group Captain John Rollo, representing the Royal Australian Air Force. To ensure that we observe the minute's silence at precisely 11 a.m, we will now pause the wreath laying. I would now like to ask if you could please be upstanding as the ode is read by the RSL State President, Major General Stephen Day. We will then pause for a minute's sacred silence. We ask that you turn off all mobile phones or turn them to silent during this period.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell, with their face to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.
Thank you for pausing to reflect and showing such dignity and respect. Please take your seats. We'll resume the wreath laying with the Dean of the Consular Corps, Mr Peter George Dowling AM, representing the Consular Corps in the state of Queensland. I will now ask the representatives of our emergency services to come forward and lay their wreaths together. Assistant Commissioner Christopher Jory, representing the Queensland Police Service. Acting Officer in charge of Spring Hill, Mr Ben Wilkin, representing the Queensland Ambulance Service. And Acting Assistant Commissioner for the Greater Brisbane Region, Mr Kevin Reading, representing the Queensland Fire Department. Representing the Department of Veterans Affairs, Deputy Commissioner Queensland, Tara Hatzamalis. I'd like to ask the representatives of our ex-service associations to come forward and lay their wreaths at the foot of the shrine. Mr Tony Young and Mr Peter Schwartz, representing the Australian Special Air Service Association Queensland. Mrs Judy Smith, representing Australian War Widows Queensland. Mr Mark Stanig, representing the Australian Commando Association Queensland. Mr Kevin Spink, representing the British Ex-Services Association Queensland. And retired Major Walter Buldo, representing the Defence Force Welfare Association Queensland. Mr Rudy Bianchi, representing the Far East Strategic Reserve Association. Mr Quinton Masson, representing the Queensland Veterans Council. Major Donald Graham, representing the PIB, NGIB, HQ PIR Association. Group Captain Retired John Bushell, representing the RAAF Association of Australia. Mr Julian Bates, representing the Royal Marines Association, Australia. Bertie Franklin, representing Navy Women Queensland. Mr Shane Fairweather, representing Corps Infinitus. Mr Sean Mulqueen, representing the 42 for 42. Mr Alex Garland, representing the National Servicemen's Association of Australia. Mr Patrick Ringholt, representing the Naval Association of Australia. Mr John Minns, representing the number 23 City of Brisbane Squadron. Mr Lawrence Watts, representing the Australian Light Horse Society. Mr Kim Flair, representing the Australian Light Horse Association. Mr Richie Piper, Master of the Honourable Company of Air Pilots. Mr Darryl Shipp, representing the Vietnam Veterans Association of Australia, Queensland. Ms Fiona Jarrett, representing Open Arms. Dr Annabelle Maguire, representing Legacy Brisbane. Mr Mike Harris, representing the Australian American Association. Mr Ty Bodie, representing the Ramey Association, Queensland. And Mr Ray Guys, representing Top H. Mrs Wendy Griggs, representing the Council of Ex-Service Women's Associations Queensland, and Megan Offord and Hayley Salter, representing Soldier On. That concludes our official wreath laying, and I will ask that there will be an opportunity for those who have brought their own wreaths and tributes to come forward at the conclusion of the ceremony to also lay them here at the foot of the shrine. I was recently hosting a commemoration service in Cairns, and there was a young veteran there who had an absolute chest full of medals, both sides. which was an indication of the operational tempo that Australia had been at for a period of time. I complimented him on his chestful, his absolute array of medals. And he said, "The ones on the right, I wear to honour my family." He said, "These ones on the left," he said, "I look at these shiny things and it reminds me of the time that I've spent away from my family, the commitment that I've given to put my life on the line for this country, the birthdays, the special events that I've missed because I was serving my country." He told me how fortunate he was to have done that. He also said whenever he looks at them, it reminds him of things that he necessarily doesn't want to be remembered about or reminded of. The sad times, the bad times. But overall, he felt fortunate to represent his country. I thought from such a young veteran, it was a very polished answer to talking about what those medals meant and what commemoration services meant for him. I'd now like to ask Chaplain Santina Waugh to lead us in prayer in memory of all of those that we have lost and have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Good morning. Before I pray, I'd like to share that I'm an Army chaplain with the Australian Defence Force, and I'm of the Christian faith. I acknowledge and respect that the Christian faith may not be your faith or belief, and therefore I invite you, before I pray, that if you are of a different belief or faith, or perhaps no belief at all, perhaps you could use this opportunity as your own reflection and solemn remembrance. Let us come now together in reflection and prayer. Loving and gracious God, on this Remembrance Day, we gather of a community of diverse beliefs, united in the respect and gratitude for those who have served and sacrificed in times of war and conflict. We honour those who went into the battle and did not return, giving their lives for the freedom and peace that we now cherish. May their courage and selflessness remain forever in our hearts, inspiring us to live lives worthy of their sacrifice. We lift up those who returned from war forever changed, bearing both visible and invisible scars. Grant them healing, strength, and the comfort of your presence. Surround them with the compassion and support of their communities, so that they may know that they are never alone. Help us to walk beside them with understanding and kindness. We remember too the families and friends and the communities who stayed behind, carrying the burden of worry, of loss, and resilience. Their sacrifices kept our nation strong through uncertain times, and we honour their endurance and their strength. We lift up those who currently serve in our defence forces, men and women of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force who are deployed today. May they serve with honour, discipline, loyalty and compassion, and may they return safely to their loved ones. Give their families and their loved ones resilience and strength. Provide all their needs and protect them from all harm as they await their loved ones' return. As we remember, we also look forward to a future with hope. May people of every faith and those without, may they be united in a shared commitment of peace, compassion, and justice. May we use this remembrance and may it inspire us to work together in a world where we will be free from the shadows of war. Grant us courage, wisdom, to help us to build a future where harmony and unity will prevail. May peace be our goal. May unity be our strength. And may love be our legacy. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. I'd now like to ask if you could all please be upstanding for the Australian National Anthem, accompanied by the Australian Army Band Brisbane.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's great land, every state and parts Australia fair. In joyful strength and let us sing, and parts Australia fair.
Please remain standing for the departure of Her Excellency the Governor of Queensland and Professor Nimmo. The Catafalque Party will now dismount the shrine. On behalf of RSL Queensland, thank you for pausing to reflect and remember today on this very important Remembrance Day in 2024. We thank those of you who have tuned in online around the world to follow this particular commemoration, but most importantly, the people that were here today, including our veterans and all the ADF members that were here that took part in today's commemoration. Before you do leave ANZAC Square today, there is an opportunity to place a poppy on the memorial grills downstairs amongst the gardens in ANZAC Square. It's a wonderful tradition that the RSL has started, and we hope that it is something that grows and that many, many people will go and entwine a poppy around the grills there. Shortly, as the invited guests start to depart, I will ask that members of the public, if you'd like to come forward and place your own wreaths and floral tributes, but also as we resume life in a normal city. We do ask that those people that may want to transit through ANZAC Square in the next couple of minutes, if you could please be respectful and courteous of those that are laying personal tributes here at the shrine. Thank you all very much for attending today, and we'll see you at our next commemoration service on behalf of RSL Queensland. Thank you.